Hi, everyone. I have a delightful guest for you today. Her name is Marjorie Saulson, and she was named the top speaking coach of the year by the International Association of Top Professionals. She's a go to public speaking and messaging mentor. She mentors successful business owners who aren't content to sit on their laurels, who have a big vision for what they can do and what can be, and who are determined to invest in the right support to get them there as quickly as possible. She delights in empowering reluctant speakers, entrepreneurs, coaches, and volunteers to feel calm and confident in any speaking situation, whether they're speaking to one person or to 1,000. And her clients say that she offers a wealth of insights from a lifetime of passion and experience, and that Marjorie's insight, coaching, and positive plans for action are an enlightening booster shot in the arm and psyche. That's pretty good, Marjorie. Welcome to the show.
Well, I'm so delighted to be here with you, Gail. I think that reaching out to those of us who are past the 50 mark is a wonderful thing. And I think it's really important to continually reinvent oneself as one gets older and become more and better than we ever were.
Well, it's interesting, Marjorie. A lot of people, when they hit the age of 50, they say, oh my gosh, my life is half over. It's too late. What can I do now? I'm kind of over the hill. And of course, our whole message is you're never over the hill until you are over the hill. So I think it's great that you're doing all of this. But what inspired you to get started on this and focus on this topic in your business?
Well, one of my early mentors said that your mess is your message. And basically, what it means is the thing that you have the hardest time figuring out how to do, you somehow get inspired to help other people follow that path a lot more quickly and easily than you did. And I'm 77. And the message I got as a little girl was, the sugar and spice and everything nice, and girls are to be seen and not heard, well, children basically, but that girls are somehow less than in a way than boys. And not only that, all children seem to periodically be told to shut up. Your parents say, will you just be quiet? And so a lot of us grow up with a fear of speaking, and women in particular experience, as you probably have, Gail, as I have, that we are not respected for our ideas. And many times we will make a suggestion. You may have had this experience in a meeting and it's poo-pooed, and then sometime later on some guy comes up with virtually the same suggestion. Everybody thinks it's wonderful. So that was one part of my history. But what is interesting is the other piece is that my mother's 3 older sisters were all suffragettes fighting for the right for women to vote. So on the one hand, I had this cultural, message, that is given to all girls, it seems. And on the other hand, I had this strong matriarchal tradition of women fighting to have their voice. And so I grew up with this balancing back and forth, but mainly on the side of silence. And it took me years to really find my own voice and the strength of my own voice, not only in public situations, but privately dealing with family, being able to hold my own with men in conversations. And so that's when I decided to go into business. I decided this is what I want to do.
Well, it's funny, Marjorie, because I have to tell you, I'm older than you are, and I was very, and I'll say very, fortunate to have a very strong mother who said to both my sister and I, and my sister's 5 years older than I am, you girls had better be able to make a living when you get out of college, and you are going to go to college, and you better be able to make your own living because you can never depend upon a man, and you need to support yourselves. We're done. So I was brought up like that, and I, of course, was the black sheep of the family. My sister was perfect, and I came along and did everything wrong. But I started working at the age of 13, and I've really always created my own jobs, and I always really, I mean, I never really was employed. I did go to work in different businesses, but created the job, did the job, and went on to something else. So I was very fortunate. I never ran into those kinds of things. As a matter of fact, I was the first woman to be president of the Better Business Bureau in one of the three largest cities in the United States. I had my own business at 21, and I've been in business ever since. And I just never experienced that. And I can also say that I was probably so naive that I didn't recognize it if it happened. In other words, if somebody kind of shouted me down or if somebody dismissed me, I kind of poo pooed it and just went on. And so I think as I look back, there may have been many times that I was not regarded seriously, but I didn't take the person saying it to me seriously. So it never stopped me. So it's interesting, but you really had a dichotomy because here you had your mom saying, be a good girl, Marjorie. And then you had these three aunts that were saying, fight for your right to speak up. So
Right.
I think it's amazing. So what about speaking in public is the fact, and we know that public speaking is the number one fear. I mean, that's the number one fear in this country, and that dying is number 7 on the list. But why do you think speaking in public makes people so fearful?
Well, the thing is, Gail, is it's really important to understand what the purpose of fear itself is. And basically, the purpose of fear is to keep us safe. And it's certainly an important part of our makeup. And certainly in caveman days or cavewoman days, you know, you needed to be very careful where you were walking if you didn't want to get eaten by a tiger. And so the thing is that what happens is that when we go to speak, fear actually overfunctions. And what we're afraid of is not the tiger or, you know, going up to speak and having a bolt of lightning come through the ceiling and strike us down. We're afraid of feeling badly. And the three basic fears that go back to really our childhood and actually our cultural fears and historical fears. The first one is criticism or rejection. I mean, well, criticism. Let's take that one first. I mean, we really hate, generally speaking, to be criticized, and especially those of us who grew up in households with a lot of criticism. And as children, we had no way of handling that. Those of us who didn't grow up in totally supportive houses, and I had well-meaning parents, and I'm sure many of your listeners did, but that doesn't change the fact that in order to civilize us as us little critters, a lot of criticism came into a lot of child rearing practices. And the second thing that people fear is rejection. And that
Well, I
actually,
can understand that. Yeah, people don't want to be rejected. They don't, you know, and because it reflects back on, as you said, their psyche, and they just, you know, they say, oh boy, you know, and it kind of quiets them down. It does kind of put them down, and they don't want to verbalize from that point on.
yeah.
You're right. You're
I mean,
absolutely right.
I don't know about you, but I was always the last one to be picked when they were picking teams for baseball and whatever in school. And it didn't feel good, but rejection actually is a primal fear. It really does go back to caveman days because if you were kicked out of the cave or the tribe, that was it.
Yeah, that's when the tiger would get you. That's for sure.
Yeah, and the third one, which kind of in a way sums up the other two, is failure. Unfortunately, in our society, we have such a negative understanding of failure. And I truly believe that there is no failure as long as we learn the lesson that whatever it is has to teach us and build on that to the next step. And the reality is you cannot accomplish anything worthwhile in this life without a lot of failure along the way. And the examples I like to use are tennis players or piano players. You would not sit down to the piano, Gail, and immediately expect for the first time to play a Beethoven sonata. I mean, you would know. I mean, and we all know that there is a process of learning that goes into that. And you would not expect to get on the tennis court and all of a sudden end up as Martina Navratilova. Well, I can't pronounce her name correctly, but anyway, to be a major tennis star. We all understand in sports and music that it takes a long time and a lot of practice to get perfect. But
Well,
somehow in other areas of our lives, we don't allow ourselves that privilege, and we're afraid of being criticized for failing. So,
well, that's so true. I mean, I can see where many people, especially if they're put down once and if they're put down twice, they're not going to open their mouth a third time. And I think it does happen around the boardroom. And I guess I've been lucky because I've been in a position of leadership in most of the situations. However, there are times that I will sit in a board meeting or have sat in a board meeting and not uttered a word because I really had nothing to contribute. But the whole issue of realizing what your potential is and that your words have value and that you have value is key. And I know that you must put some kind of price tag on this in terms of what it costs business owners by not, being able to speak up in meetings or in situations or where their opinion counts.
what I like to sum it up as, Gail, is that when you cannot share what you are offering and what other people may desperately need, you not only keep yourself small and feel badly because you know you're not doing what you really need to do, you keep your results small, and that definitely ends up affecting your bottom line. But it's interesting, by the way, that you should mention boardrooms and meetings, because I've worked with a number of people who have shared with me that they sit in meetings nervous the entire time and afraid that somebody will ask them a question that they can't answer and that they'll look, stupid, or it'll affect their ability to be promoted or whatever. In fact, I developed a whole system for people who are asked questions that they can't answer to help them uh, feel more comfortable and confident, because the sad fact is that there are Betty Bullies and Sam Snipers in this world, and they sometimes take delight in trying to put other people on the spot in order to make themselves look better. So if you happen to be unfortunate enough to be in an organization that has one of those people, or if you have a boss that that shoots people down and shoots ideas down, that really raises the stakes for people emotionally.
Oh,
And
there's no question about that, Marjorie. I mean, I know that when I was doing a lot of consulting work, this is a terrible thing to say, but many of the people who hired me, when I went through the interviews with the people and went through the analyzation of the organization and that kind of thing, I very often found that the boss or the CEO or the manager, depending on what I was doing, was the problem. And because I am an ethical person, I had to tell them this. And very often they wouldn't rehire me or bring me back because, of course, they didn't want to hear that they were the issue. On the other hand, those that did, of course, then progressed, they changed, they got training, they got education, they got knowledge. But it's true. I mean, and still to this day, there are a lot of people who, will do anything to put you down so that they will get ahead. And hopefully people will find them out, but that's not always true. So I know you have a couple of strategies that people can use so that they reduce that feeling of, oh my gosh, my nerves are right there in front, or fear. So what are some of the strategies that you recommend?
well, first of all, I truly believe the foundational piece that gives you security is knowing your message. Really, really believing and having an authentic belief that what you have to share is worthwhile. And that way, when you share something and somebody starts to criticize it, what you need to do is tell that little sweet inner child of the past who's feeling, uh, really downgraded and criticized, and we all have that lurking inner child somewhere. that you're an adult now and you'll take care of it and you've got that little baby's back, and you just go into your adult self and you ask yourself two questions. The first one actually is an observation. Consider the source. Is this person who is criticizing you someone whose opinion you respect? If it's not someone whose opinion you respect, then, dismiss it.
Marjorie, no, that is easier said than done.
Of course. Of course.
If I'm one of these people who, first of all, is not inclined to speak up anyway, let's just say that, I'm not that kind of person. And I do finally get my thing out that I'm so proud to have said. And this person cuts me down. Whether I like this person, respect this person, it has got to have a traumatizing effect on me.
That's why there's a second piece to my advice.
Okay.
When somebody criticizes me, what I try and do, and it's not always easy, I'm not saying some of this stuff is easy, but I try to reframe the criticism in my mind as a suggestion. And then that enables me to go into my thinking brain and get out of the emotional trauma and say to myself, is there some kernel of value in what this person is saying? Is there something that I can learn from this suggestion? Because I don't know about you, Gayle, but I am not under the illusion that I know everything. And so sometimes people actually mean well, but are, have an unfortunate way of expressing themselves. And sometimes when people give you a criticism, as uncomfortable as it feels, there may be some kernel in there that is of value. And so if you can kind of go into your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, which, let's face it, is only 4% of your brain. So sometimes it's hard to get it to function when you're feeling emotionally attacked. But say, is there something here that's valuable? And the other thing you can do is when somebody says something that's critical, you can question that person. And you say, let me make sure I understand. I always like to learn from people. The minute you say that, it deflates the other person.
You're disarming them. You're actually.
Yeah, it really deflates the situation, especially if other people are there and feeling extremely uncomfortable. If you can make other people feel more comfortable in an uncomfortable situation, you've already set yourself far above the critic. You can say, let me make sure I understand. Are you suggesting, and if you use the word suggesting instead of criticizing, are you suggesting that perhaps this ... whatever, or do I understand, kind of ask some questions of the person who's making the criticism. Force that person to clarify what part of this, I'm always looking for ways to improve what I do. Could you share with me what part of what I shared you feel needs to be edited or tweaked or improved? And by doing that, you immediately remove the blanket criticism of everything, and you ask for clarification. And then you are able to get the conversation on more of an intellectual level.
Well, I have to say that many times these people don't have an answer. They don't have a real suggestion. They're just doing it to be troublemakers.
Yes.
And so when you confront them, and that's what you're doing it nicely, but you're confronting them, they don't know what to say because they really have nothing to back themselves up. So it's true, and it's just a shame though, Marjorie, that people have to go through this, because effective organizations are ones where the teams work together. Now, whether they're teams in a department or whether it's a team of a board of directors or whatever it happens to be, things go smoothly when there's respect and when there's sincere ability to work together, even if you don't agree. I mean, there's lots of times that you go along with something that you don't agree with, as I say, as long as it's not unethical or immoral, then it's okay, So you're absolutely right. And it's very difficult. And I guess maybe that's one of the reasons why I never worked in a company, because I remember telling my mom, I was a little tot when I said this. I said, I don't think I'd ever be able to work for anyone because I can't do anything stupid that I don't believe in. And of course, she just
Good for
at that
you.
time, she said, telling me, yes, you have to have a job. And I'm thinking, if I don't agree, because I remember one summer she got me this fabulous job working for the state, and it was typing checks. And oh, she was so proud because this was a great job and benefits and everything. Of course, not for me at that time. It was a part-time.
Boring.
That's exactly what I said. After 3 weeks, I said to her, people do this their entire lives? And she said, yes. She said, some people have been here 30 years. I said, well, not me. And I went out and found my own thing to do. But I can see that there are people that are in that situation. So let me ask you this. If
Sure.
someone asks you a question that you can't answer because, it just isn't, it just isn't something and believe me, there are lots of things I don't know. So there are some things I'll say I don't know, but I'll find out. Or can you educate me? What do you do in a situation like that?
Well, sometimes it is appropriate simply to say, I don't know. But when you're in a boardroom situation with a group of people, by the way, you don't want to do that. You want to see what you can do to handle the situation in such a way that's authentic and honest without making you feel like you're being stupid. So the system I came up with is I call it the ACED system. You remember when you were in school and you said I aced a test, ACED?
Right.
That's the mnemonic device for my system. The A is for acknowledge. And you hear people do this all the time. That's a really good question. I mean, it buys you time because sometimes the answer really is lurking in your subconscious and you need to give your subconscious a little time to give you the gift. So when you acknowledge that the question that's a very interesting question, that does two things. It buys you a little time and it's a compliment to the person who asked the question. Then the C stands for clarify. Ask for clarification. Now, let me make sure I understand what you're asking correctly. Do you mean in this situation, or do you mean this, or am I understanding your question correctly? Could you please clarify it for me? And that forces the person, because a lot of people do not know how to ask a good question, let's face it. And
now,
so
I've only got 2 minutes left in this segment.
okay,
So we got to get
all right, very
the
quickly. So then you see if there's a bunch of people and you still don't get the answer, you E is elicit. You say, I really haven't thought of an answer right away. Is there anybody else here who can answer that question? And somebody does or doesn't. If nobody does, then the D is either delay or deliver. I need to get back to you. This is a great question, and I want to make sure I give you an honest answer, or you deliver an answer that your subconscious gave you. And what this does is make everybody knows that you're honest and authentic and they can trust your word.
Well, there you have it, folks. We're done with part one of our interview with Marjorie. And, Marjorie is the top speaking coach of the year. So she knows what she's talking about. So remember this ACE. ACE is really important. So we're going to go over this again when we come back because I want to make sure everybody gets it. But hold on. We'll be back with part two in just a few minutes.